blessings, everyone. Welcome to the new Just Us Speaks podcast from Just Leadership. I'm your co-host, Lester Young.
And I'm your co-host, Hakeem Crampton. Just Us Speaks is being produced to amplify the voices of directly impacted people, particularly the voices of formerly incarcerated people.
Just Leadership was founded on the principle that those who are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, but too often further away from the power and the resources to affect positive change.
So on this first season of the Just Us Speaks podcast, we're interviewing leaders from the most recent 2022 cohort of Just Leadership USA's Leading with Conviction Leadership Training Program.
Today, we're talking with Edwin Fuller. Edwin organized around criminal justice reform issues in Ohio, Miami Valley region. Raised in San Diego, he has made Dayton, Ohio his home since 1998.
Currently, Edwin is involved in contesting the building of a new jail for Montgomery County, developing a juvenile-oriented pre-arrest diversion model for the county, and growing an organizing vehicle focused on the inclusion of formerly incarcerated people in partnership with faith-based organizations.
Edwin started organizing in 2016, focusing on faith communities. He is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, holds a bachelor's degree in history from San Diego State University. He currently serves on the board of Faith in Action, Unitarian Universalist, Justice Ohio, and Leaders for Equality in Action in Dayton.
Edwin also runs marathons and lives in a home filled with the mischievous pitter-patter of his dogs, Jasper and Max. Edwin, welcome to the Just Us Speaks podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Edwin, tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into some of the questions that we have. We've had an opportunity to let the listeners hear your bio, but what is it that we didn't mention in that bio that you want our listeners to hear about you?
I think probably what the most significant thing probably about me is I always like learning new things and growing. And life experience as a formerly incarcerated person is definitely about growing, definitely about learning, reaching new limits and growing and challenging yourself in every way. You mentioned I run marathons. Definitely that is a challenge and growth area for me physically, but also encourages me to try and grow and become even more than I can mentally and spiritually as well.
Wonderful. So, that opens up a great conversation about, your most recent graduation from Leading with Convictions 2022 cohort. Congratulations once again.
Congrats.
Tell us about that learning experience for you, about being a member of that cohort. What were some of your favorite parts of that? What were some of the things that you gleaned from that you're going to take into your future?
Leading with Conviction was absolutely one of the best experiences that I've had in recent memory. I think probably the biggest takeaway for me was the community that was developed with others like me, my people who have been through a significant change in their life. And there are so many out there for whom incarceration is the beginning of the trip down the well to things just in their life that don't go well. They never recover from it. It's so encouraging and positive to be around others who have said, you know what, this is not going to destroy me. It's not going to end my life. That no matter what anybody else thinks, that I am going to change and I am going to grow from this. And not just me personally, but I want to bring that to others. And that in the cohort, just the opportunities for being able to network and have conversation with others who have overcome, in many cases, I think, wow, I'd have never grown out of that one. And yet they have become excellent in every way out of that challenge. And it inspires me to want to do that as well.
Edwin, Hakeem, I was listening earlier, and this just came up as I was listening to you, Edwin, speak about how important that when you graduated from the Leading Conviction, of being a part of the Leading Conviction, how community meant so much, and how this Leading Conviction really highlights how leaders have truly been able to grow from the concrete. As Tupac Shakur mentioned, that the rose that grew out of the concrete. And I was listening to something that Mike Tyson mentioned. He says that for the entire 3 years of his incarceration, he found the most peace inside of the prison. He said before he went to jail, he was making over $30 million for a fight. But he said that in one of the person who was interviewing would say, hey, Mike, how was that possible for you to be making $30 million? But for the 3 years of your incarceration was the best time for you, right? And I hear, when I think about my time of incarceration and listen to all of the leaders talk about it, was like, that's we really found our voice inside of that prison. And so my question is for you is what was that model for you while you were serving that sentence in prison? What was the model of life that gave you a sense of peace, gave you that resilience to keep pushing through when it looked like you wasn't going to make it, but you kept telling yourself you was? What was that thing for you?
That is a really piercing question. I'll never forget when I first got locked up, and I looked at the time ahead of me, and I said, "There's no way I'm going to make it through this." And honestly, yeah, the first couple of years, there was a lot of struggling with depression, struggling with loss of hope, struggling with not even being sure where to go. But I think, it's interesting you mentioned the example there from Mike Tyson, in that time in there forced me to do something. Well, it forced, and it also gave me the liberty and the freedom to do something that in the outside world, I was always too busy to do. And that is to come face to face with me. That it was that time where if I was going to survive this physically, mentally, spiritually, I was going to have to get honest with Edwin. And I was going to have to spend time with Edwin, understanding what got him in there and what it was going to take to get him out of there. And how is he going to fix what has gone wrong, and not just fix, but how am I going to thrive once I come back out? And so that was the biggest takeaway for me in that time, is that it allowed me the freedom that I think too often we're on the outside. We have too many distractions. We have too many excuses. We have too many other things that keep us from coming face to face with ourselves. And that's not fun. That's not fun. In a lot of instances, it's not fun having to tell yourself the truths that you don't want to hear often, and to have other people speak truth to you as well. But that's what we grow from. I know for me, that's what made me grow, made me actually get honest enough to where I wanted to have hope again. Because at one point I didn't even want to have hope.
Wow.
But once I turned that corner, then it was, honestly, it was the beginning of a long road of hard work, and that hard work did not stop when I passed through those gates and came back. That hard work continues, having to be conscious of that, and what is it going to take for me to continue to thrive and to be able to speak truth to others who are either in that situation or they may be on the road to that situation. But that is the biggest takeaway for me out of that experience.
That's powerful. So, that really opens up a good question as it relates to that lived experience, right? Because you come out of that lived experience that you just described as a butterfly, having been a caterpillar in a cocoon, right? And so do you have a motto of life after all that experience right there? And is there a relationship between that motto of life that you have for yourself and the meaning of leadership? And if there's a connection, share that with us.
I looked when I was coming out and coming back into the real world, and looking at what I was going to look at as a model for my life personally, what I was going to look at as a model for how I interact with others. And I look at, there are many great faith leaders, no matter what system of faith you subscribe to, there are commonalities between leaders, powerful leaders, and that is that they walk with others and they are willing to be walked with. And walking is slow. Walking can be scary. Walking can be tiring. But I know for me that is what the model. My motto changes probably every week. I find some new way of. I look for some new way of taking things and breaking them down to something that's easy that I can say to myself every day. In addition to keep on keeping on. Today is a new opportunity to keep on keeping on. Doing the next right thing continues to ring in my mind. But the motto and model that I work with is walking with others. I think when we look at the great faith leaders, whether we're looking at Jesus, whether we're looking at Muhammad, or whether we're looking at anybody else, that they actually spent time with others, not trying to lead. But I like to put it this way. What I need is not someone ahead of me, not someone behind me, but what I need is a witness to my life that validates me and that validates my experience.
Just Leadership USA amplifies the power of directly impacted people by investing, educating, empowering, and elevating their voices so they have the tools and resources to self-organize and advocate for themselves, their families, and their communities. Together, we build an equitable, fair, and just U.S. To date, over 1,400 leaders in 45 states and in Washington, D.C. are hard at work transforming people and communities who are harmed by mass incarceration. Please partner with us to bend the arc of criminal legal reform by donating to our leadership programs today. Our network of leaders is strong and growing. Together, we're building local power for national impact. Every donation supporting JLUSA and our leaders has a ripple effect across families, communities, and generations. With your support, we can continue working together towards our singular vision of a just, equitable future for all. To learn more, go to jlusa.org/give2023. That's jlusa.org/GIVE2023.
I love that. And just like reading your bio and having an opportunity to talk to you in the Leading with Conviction cohort, it comes off like I love that, just hear that power of faith that resides in you as a person. Like, you know, how faith played a role in shaping you into the leader that you are today. And just the reference you made to many of the great men who preceded us, and how that plays an important role for us to try to model and have an opportunity to look at. So it's like, we know the power of vision, right? We know that as a leader, we all have to have a vision. My question is to you, like, what is your vision for your life in the next 5 to 10 years as a man who's doing this work around challenging this system called mass incarceration?
5 years. Some days
100 years. You got 100
some
years.
days I have a hard time getting 5 weeks down the road, let alone 5 years. But some of the work that I'm involved in here in Ohio, one of our organizations, Building Freedom Ohio, which is an organizing vehicle that is built entirely around those who are formerly incarcerated. We prefer to put it those who are justice impacted, because that's not just those of us who go behind the walls, but families as well. But it is, my vision for the impact that I want to have is to walk with these men and women, to walk with them in, first of all, helping them to have the same, hopefully reaching the same epiphany that I did, that because I served time, that is not the end of my life. That is not the end of value in who I am and what I can contribute to my family and to my community. But that by working together, that we in community, by investing in our leadership, by investing in our experiences, not being the showpiece for other advocates, bless the work that they do, investing in ourselves, that in 5 years, we can actually have a power role in governing the state. Because when you look at, I'm just talking about the state of Ohio, the number of formerly incarcerated there are, who, if we add up all those votes, that's enough to move something. That's enough to actually make changes in the conversation and the narrative. In 5 years, my vision for me is I want to be a critical player in shaping that narrative and empowering those who want to be in that conversation for how to get there. Often we want to have that vision. I want to be there in 5 years. Okay, well, what's the bridge that gets me there?
Thank you.
I want to be the bridge maker.
Powerful. So in order to get to that bridge, Edwin, your bio clearly shows the footprints that you've made, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about, your journey in particular, how you got involved specifically with the work you're in, to where you're at this position now, to where that 5-year vision can be realized because of the ultimate work that you did.
One of the things when I came home is, I think I went through that, perhaps through a phase that many of us do. And when we come back and we're trying to figure out, okay, how do I just get my feet on the ground and get a roof over my head and figure out how to take care of my responsibilities? In my journey, my family was not here in Ohio. I was blessed, and I really literally mean blessed, by friends and those who believed in me when quite often I did not believe in myself. And you ever go to whether it's a church or an organization, and somebody befriends you and you're going like, okay, well, why do you want to be friends with me? What's the agenda here? And if they only knew, those type of things. But I was blessed. And as I started to build friendships, I'll never forget one day when I was having lunch with a friend of mine who I was going on a rant about something that I was upset about in regards to coming home because I wasn't able to put my finger on what it was that was bothering me and I was angry about.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? He said, I want to ask you two questions. He said, first of all, first question is, have you ever thought about talking to somebody? So I'm not saying you're crazy, but you would really benefit from talking to somebody to help you share and work through those things. He said, and the second thing is, have you ever thought about becoming an organizer? I said, well, what's an organizer? And so I began a conversation about what exactly formal organizing is all about. He said, you're doing a lot of it, and you definitely have the passion and the interest in it. He said, but if you are open to that, let's have a conversation about it. So that conversation literally began my entry into the world of organizing. But even more so, I think it unlocked a door inside of me that took me 2 or 3 years, honestly, of therapy to really put my finger on what it was that was bothering me. And it was that I was trying to recapture something. I wasn't trying to recapture the job. I wasn't really trying to capture the family, because we all know that when we come home, we cannot just pick up things and go back to business as usual and pick up the old lives. We have to build a new one. And in building my new life, I said there was something I was reaching for. When I finally came to the conclusion is that I'm reaching for dignity. I want my dignity back. I want that dignity that comes from being able to look in the mirror in the morning and see myself as a man, see myself as an agent who has the ability to shape my life and my future, and those around me that I love and care about, who has the ability to do that. And so as I stepped into the world of organizing, that was what really, that's that burning in the belly, that coal, that ember that keeps me going and points the direction is, I want dignity back from my life, and I want others to have that as well. Because I think each one of us coming back yearns for that. Not only, as I keep saying, those of us who have been actually incarcerated, but our families and loved ones who bear that burden with us. They want their dignity back, and they want their agency back, the ability to shape their lives and to move forward. So as I've had the blessing to be affiliated with a lot of individuals, formerly incarcerated, and allies who want to be part of that fight, it has given me a vision that it can happen. It can happen if we can put our fingers on the dignity of our own lives, be hungry enough to go after it together.
I love what you lifted up about having dignity. Something that a lot of people, our families included, don't understand how dehumanizing prison is, right? And how it strips you of that dignity. And almost like I share with people how prison also makes you feel invisible. You live in this invisible world inside of prison, because all prisons are so far out of the sight of the community, right? And you live in this place where you now almost start to feel like you're actually invisible, especially for families who don't go and see you. The officers don't see you as a human being. When you're constantly being script searched, it strips you of that dignity. And when you walk out of prison, we fight with that. We really fight with trying to hold on to and redefine our dignity as men and as women. And that's a part of the reentry conversation we don't have enough of, and how we restore our dignity after living in an environment that is intentionally stripping us of that dignity. So in that whole process, we know that self-care is important, right? Like getting out of prison, self-care is so important. And you lift up the conversation about counseling and a therapist. Like, what are some of the things outside of the marathons that you do that you take care of, Edwin, to make sure that you continue to control your agency when it relates to your dignity, respect, as you're moving forward in this work?
That's an excellent question. And I've had to come to learn through constant reminders about the importance of self-care. By nature, my father's a physician. I come from a family of physicians and high energy achievers and professionals. And by nature, I'm a workaholic. The work is always on my mind. That's what I focus on. And when I was, the reason I fell into marathons was because I did it. As a matter of fact, when I was locked up, I started running because I'd always hated it beforehand. But that started to get me into a zone where I could actually do my mental housekeeping and thinking. And it was tuning my mind and my body together. And that in partnership with spiritual work, I think gave me a good basis for moving forward. But I think that the most important thing for me when we talk about the conversation of self-care for me is being intentional to be outside of myself, to read as much as possible, to seek out others' lived experience through conversation. I love movies. Definitely a fan of those, but self-care to me is always about how do I actually step out of myself, take care of myself, and yet see what is going on outside, what's constantly running around in here. I definitely think there's always room for spiritual nurturing of whatever faith you are, but there needs to be something bigger and more than I and my problems that calls me forward, that asks me, that, to quote a character, it makes me want to be a better man. Whether it's for my family, for my loved ones, friends, just for my community. I want to be better, especially not only because of the burden that my past actions brought to them, but because I believe that is what I am called to be, is to be the best that I can. So like I said, I try to reach out. I definitely cannot overemphasize the need for talking with people who you should be talking with. And sometimes we have to get out of those toxic situations and relationships. But I believe in therapy. I believe in, I think when I was concluding my time with my therapist, and she was actually kicking me out of the nest. And I said, really? I said, okay, are you saying I'm cured now? She goes, and she said, Edwin, we don't use that word now. We don't use that concept. She said, I said, well, okay, so I'm good to go. She said, let's put it this way. All I did was give you the safe space to do the work that you needed to do. And he said, you kind of cleaned up your own mess. So she encouraged me to continue doing that and to always, be willing to step back into that type of a situation if I need to, and not being afraid to. It doesn't make me less of anything. To get advice, to get perspective, to have somebody, as she would often do, tell me about myself, and be able to move on from there. But I think self-care is so important, and it is so much a product of looking outside of myself and being appreciative of not only what others are living through and going through, but how I can help to lift them up to be better individuals.
We are so excited to invite you to the Just Leadership USA 9th Annual Benefit Gala, Monday, June 5th, 2023, at PhD Rooftop Lounge at Dream Downtown in New York City. We're excited to bring JLUSA leaders, allies, and advocates together in person to unite around our shared values and propel our vision for the future. During the last year, we've made significant strides in building our capacity and infrastructure to become the only national systems change movement and policy table led by and for directly impacted people. This coming June, please join us for our first in-person celebration in over 2 years. Learn more at jlusa.org/gala. That's jlusa.org/GALA.
It's been a great interview with you, Edwin. Really appreciate you taking this time with us. And one of the things we've been asking all of the leaders is about, what one inspirational book did you read while you were incarcerated that you would like to really share with our viewers so that they could perhaps be inspired as well?
I read so many books while I was locked up, but I tell you some that an author who really moved me, and there are not many authors that I need to have a box of Kleenex handy because I do get emotional in my reading. But Khaled Hosseini, who wrote The Kite Runner and The Mountains Echoed, and I forgot what his third book is. What I find moving about his work and what inspired me is that he writes about events that are, a lot about women and their lives in Afghanistan and in parts of the world where the things, even being locked up, that I had more and safer than many of those individuals grew up with, and yet how they rose out of their situation, that what they valued in their lives and their relationships. And that really inspired me to really think about, as I like to say, first world problems and have perspective. First world problems are like, my cable isn't working, or I can't get my Wi-Fi. And there are many others who are literally living in circumstances where there's bombs and bullets that are flying, and it has been generational for them, and yet how they rise above that, and how that does not limit them and who they are. And that was just powerful for me because it number one, as an author, he unlocked emotions in me, but even more so, he inspired me to have perspective on my life, perspective on the things that often allow us to go down that road into criminality, criminal thinking, because we don't have perspective. And that is important. So his works inspired me incredibly because they're just about life. And that's what this is.
I think too, just it helps you gain a level of gratitude for what you do have.
Amen.
Gratitude is so important. I remember sitting in prison and I used to complain about everything. And this guy, one of the volunteers, said, "Hey man, let me go to your prison cell one day." And he did. And he walked into the cell. He's like, "Man, you got a TV, you got clean sheets, you got a bed, you got toilet paper, you got a toilet that flushes. Imagine the people in the world that don't have none of this." So it's like, man, get a hold of yourself. Even though you're incarcerated, some people who are living in torn communities would love to possibly be here where you at, because you eat 3 times a day and you complain about the food. So it's about having that level of gratitude. And I like what you mentioned about that perspective. Edwin, as we're about to conclude this, is there anything else that you will want to share with the leaders and share before you leave? Give some word of advice for a young person, meaning no matter the age, but someone who's coming out of incarceration and getting into organizing. What would be that tip you would give them as we conclude this podcast of being an effective organizer, family man, etc.?
My personal walk in organizing that I think speaks to this, and hopefully I can put in a nutshell here, is that when I first came into organizing, my mindset was, wow, I've got certain set skills, talents, blah, 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 that I can help these other people get to where they want to be or to organize them.
Yeah.
And yet what I really found is that organizing has been a continual journey into me. Because to the extent that I am willing to be real and to be real with others about who I am, where I'm at on that bridge that I'm trying to cross in the agency and dignity, the more I'm willing to do that, the more effective I can become, because organizing is about relationships. You got to be willing to be real, and you got to be willing to be you. It's not about who has the right set of skills. That's not about it. It's who has the right set of authenticity. And that speaks to whether you're getting into organizing or even trying, as we come home and trying to reestablish ourselves in our own life and in our community, is that we got to be real, and we got to be willing to let people in order to give out. Organizing is a journey. I think leadership is a journey. Whether that's something, and that's something else I just found in the cohort. As each person, each man and woman was open about, here's where I was at, here's where I'm trying to go, and I'm looking for somebody to walk with me in that. And that's what attracts people, and not just attracts people to you as a leader, but is what makes you open to growing and changing. And that's what I'm trying to do.
It's been a powerful, wonderful time, engaging you, learning about your story and, your why. It's just been wonderful. So we definitely thank you and once again congratulate you on your journey last year, graduating from 2022, Leading with Conviction. Continue to do great work, Edwin. We appreciate you being a guest on our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure and really just, wow, literally a privilege and honor being part of Just Leadership and my people.
My people. Be blessed, my brother.